Welcome. Today we have a special guest. He is a mechanical engineer by trade who transitioned into a real estate investor by buying underperforming properties in the great state of Texas. Please welcome Blake Alpen, the founder of Kingshurst Capital.
Thanks for that, Eugene. Thanks for the intro, and I'm happy to be here. So looking forward to sharing a few insights and some questions.
Great to have you here, Blake. So how does an engineer become a full-time real estate investor?
It's a bit of a story, but it depends how long you have. It was definitely a roller coaster in terms of some learnings to get there, right? It doesn't just, I suppose, happen straight away. Initially, I just grew up in a small country town, and it was started out, I'm not sure if my mum made the executive decision or my dad drew the short straw, but, from the age of 5 years old, I was on construction sites with my dad, pretty much doing concrete slabs for residential and industrial real estate, right? But I went away to university after that and did university, completed that. And like most people, got a job and thought that was going to be my sort of way of living a comfortable life and getting to have more time than just 2 weeks off at the end of the year. But fortunately, and I say fortunately, I actually got made redundant after about 3 years of being an engineer. And that really opened my eyes to, wait a minute, I can't be so reliant on a W-2, right? I've got to put other things in place to really set myself up. And I can't be leaning on a W-2 or an employer to do that for me. So that was probably one of the first things that got me towards that.
Interesting. And so after 3 years of working as an engineer, you saw an opportunity to transition into real estate ownership. There must have been something in the middle.
No, that was just the start. That was just the wake-up call, right? That was the wake-up call. And that wasn't even the thing that got me straight into real estate. That was what made me think, I've got to do something else. This isn't, the whole working and being in a job isn't exactly what it's cracked out to be. So I actually got 3 jobs after that, thinking that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to set a bit of a net for myself and just have more money in the bank and just have that comfort there because I'll have 3 jobs. So there was a time there where I was working 3 jobs. So I had a day shift job, a night shift job, and a weekend job. And the time that made me really snap out of it and realize I do have to invest in real estate was after about 6 or 9 months of just working 3 jobs straight, and the only rest I was getting was in my car as I drove to the next job. It was about 3 a.m. on my 3rd day of being awake. And my delusional brain came up with a not so delusional thought that you're clearly doing something wrong here. You're working all these hours, you're giving up, your social life, you're not even sleeping. But if you lose these jobs, the money you've been saving is just going to dwindle away. And you've still got to come back to work tomorrow, right? Like I'm still dependent on these jobs. So at 3 a.m. with my delusional brain, I thought to myself, well, real estate is the thing that's made 90% of millionaires. And I didn't know too much about it. But at 3 a.m., I just told myself, that's what you're going to go and figure out. You're going to go start doing real estate. You're going to learn along the way. And it's going to be a process, but that's what I'm going to focus on. So at 3 a.m., my delusional brain told me that real estate was what I was going to go for after working for 3 days straight.
Wow. Amazing. 3 a.m. Decision-making. Well, that's for us night owls, that's when I make a lot of my decisions and thinking. So I can relate.
Yeah, exactly right. Fortunately, no more 3 a.m.s for me. So yeah, it's been good.
Good. So what was the first property that you acquired?
It was a learning experience, but it was a single family. It was a single family property. I went to an event and there was a guru on stage, and I ended up following this guru's advice. This was back in Australia when I was living in Australia. And he pretty much said, this is an up and coming area, single family property. It was a build. So I did the construction for my first property, and I learned everything there was to learn about, doing single family properties. So I bought in an up and coming area that was so up and coming that no one wanted to rent the property out. So I couldn't rent it out for about 6 months. And then when I did rent it out, the area wasn't the best area. So the tenants didn't want to pay rent. So I learned that the hard way. And then when I kicked those people out and got new tenants in, those tenants nearly burnt the house down. So just all things that you make sure that you got your insurance and you're buying in the right place, which at a young age I wasn't thinking about, right? I just thought buying any real estate deal will be a good opportunity, which now that deal is good. So time heals all wounds sort of thing. But I suppose you want to buy right from the start.
Right. So you still have the house that you bought?
I still do, yeah. It's doing fine now. I don't hear anything out of it. It's a much better area now and has turned into a more family orientated sort of community.
Gotcha. How long did it take?
It was three or 4 years of pain
Okay.
and it's 3 or 4 years of me going, what have I done wrong here? And that first property that I bought made me say to myself, geez, and I forgot to mention that it even went backwards in its price. So I looked it up a couple of years after I'd built it, and it was worth less. So I thought to myself, okay, the test of time will make this property raise in price. I know that. That's fine. It's not that far out of a CBD. So I thought to myself, at the bare minimum, I would just love that it covered its bills, right? That it was like a teenager that you want to leave the house, at least cover your own bills so I don't have to fork it out for you. So that's what I was thinking about this property. And then for the next property, it was, okay, I need to find a property that looks after itself and pays its own bills. And that's what I sort of transitioned into after that. That was my next buy, was a positively geared property. And yeah, it was a much better purchase.
Got it. So definitely lots of lessons learned on that first acquisition, but that didn't break you, right? That still gave you motivation to keep going.
It broke me for a year or two, and then I bounced back. No,
Good.
it was good learnings, yeah. But I suppose it did make me just question: am I doing something wrong here? How can I own 100 of these when this one's giving me so much grief? So that sort of ran through my mind a lot when I was first thinking about real estate, and then I sort of always use that as a sort of a pillar of, can I own 100 of these? Can I buy 100 of these and I can own them and it's gonna be fine for me? So that was sort of without knowing, that was what I used as a sort of a benchmark for me.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha. And so to get started, what was your source of capital? Did you have some savings to buy the first property, or did you work with investors? How did you get it done?
yeah, I bought all of my properties through my own savings, just working and doing it that way, right? So for the first property, it came from the concreting days as a kid, and when I went into university, the money I was making in my part-time job. And so yeah, all my properties that I bought before shifting into the US were all through just hard-earned working every day that I could, sort of thing, and saving every dollar possible, until I suppose the day came that I was at work and thought to myself, what am I doing wrong here again? So I get that thought a lot, which is sort of good and bad at the same time.
Gotcha. And so, okay, transitioning from Australia into US, how did that happen?
That's a story on itself as well, I suppose. So after the 3 a.m. of the delusional thought that was a smart idea that, okay, you're going to go into real estate, I realized that working 3 jobs and, not sleeping for 3 days is probably going to be the death of me. So I needed to still make money, but have enough time to educate myself on real estate. So I ended up getting a job in the mines. And that was, the thing about that was, it was on the other side of Australia, so the other side of the country. It was a 5-hour flight away. So I didn't have, I still have friends, but I wasn't putting any effort into friends and family at that time. I was just working constantly, right? So moving across to the other side of the country probably made no difference. So I packed up my life, moved across there, and I was just working in a mine for a few years. And I was, like I said before, I was saving up, buying property, saving up, buying property. And then there was a time there when I was sitting at my desk, and I just remembered it's been a rough week, and I probably worked for 3 weeks straight, sort of thing, and hadn't had a day off in a long time. And I was sitting at my desk, and the same thing happened to me. I had enough money in my bank account to probably buy 2 or 3 more properties. I was holding off because of the interest rates at that time. And then I just thought to myself, even if you buy these 2 or 3 more properties, you still got to come to work tomorrow. And then at that time, I sort of had heard and knew that the US has more opportunity and it also gives better returns. And I just said to myself, go and learn about US real estate. Go and see if it is what allegedly it is, right? Ended up getting into a mastermind from there and was learning for about 9 months or something like that. And just, yeah, when I learned about Texas, I was just so blown away, right? Just the metrics of Texas just sort of sat me back, and I'm like, I got to be there. Because I remember I was up on site. I was in the middle of the desert because that's where the mines are in Australia. I was in the middle of the desert. So I've just walked out of the gym because I've finished work for the day. I was in the gym. And I walked out, and there's a group of guys there sitting in a circle. And they're all there in a chair, sitting around, drinking beers. None of them had a smile on their face. They were sitting there sort of kicking the dirt. And I thought about, and when I walked out of the gym, I thought back to everything I'd learned about the US economy and the US real estate. And Texas was just on my mind because Texas, this small little state, has 30 million people, and Australia has 26 million people. So Texas, a state, has a greater population than Australia. And 80% of that population of Texas is within the Texas Triangle, which is a 3 to 4 hour drive from each other. So there's that, on top of the Texas GDP is the 9th largest in the world. So it's got a larger GDP than Canada, Mexico, Australia, and Russia, all singly. So I was thinking about that in the back of my mind, and I was looking at these guys that were 40, 50, 60 years old. And that was the path that I was heading towards, right? To be sitting there, not much of a smile on my face, have been giving up my life in the middle of the desert just to make a good dollar or two. Or I could see the opportunity that was in Texas in that dense area. And I just said to myself on that day, I was like, you got to move over to that side of the world and just pursue US real estate. And then I'm not in the US at the moment. I'm living in Mexico because I don't have a US visa, but that's the next step, that I get a visa at some point and move over. I still make flights over to Houston and to Texas to visit properties and go to events and whatnot. But yeah, that was pretty much probably the turning point, seeing those guys in that circle, and I'm thinking, that's where I'm headed. I got to do something different. So, yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So you jumped across the world, landed in Mexico, and started pursuing real estate in Texas. How many properties do you have right now?
In Texas, because I only got here a few months ago, so I don't have any, but we had an LOI. We had 2 LOIs accepted just last 2 weeks with the people that I partner with. And I actually flew across and did due diligence on one of them about 3 weeks ago now in San Antonio. It was a 224 unit property. We did that due diligence, and then we decided to walk away. But we've got a 411 unit in Houston that's currently LOI accepted, and PSA should be signed this week, and moving forward with that. So the capital raise and the due diligence should start pretty soon. But yeah, for now, still just making my way into the US real estate for sure.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about that. You said you walked away from a deal. You're working on another deal. How do you know if it's the right deal, if it's the right opportunity? How do you underwrite them?
Yeah, and I suppose from where I stand, I lean on the people that I partner with, right? They've got way more experience than me. All 3 of those partners together, they've got more experience than I do days on this earth. So it's always good to be with people like that. And I don't get too involved with the underwriting of the deal. I'm mainly involved with the investor relations side of things. So capital raising, like you and I are both familiar with. So focusing on that and just building out the relationships with investors is what I focus on the most. So I suppose trusting the experience of the operators I'm with and their decisions is what I'm doing at this stage.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So then, as far as investor relations, I would imagine these large properties involve several groups or one large group of investors that are participating in it. What does it take to raise equity to acquire a large commercial property like that?
Well, at the moment, it's taking a lot more than what apparently it was a couple of years ago. So a lot of people have been telling me. But yeah, it's interesting at the moment, right? Like there's still interest there, but I suppose on a 411 unit property, it's $36 million, and you're raising about 10 million of that. And to do that with just LP investors at this time, it's definitely an interesting time to do it, and it's a struggle. So we see ourselves getting a pref check for that, and just getting that preferred equity check to cover about 5 million, and that'll leave us to raise 5 million with the LPs. So it's just a more viable option at this stage.
Got it. How long does it take to raise $5 million?
Well, at the moment, the people that I'm partnering with, they still have one from the start of the year, like March. They're still closing. They've closed on it, but just that last remaining part. So it could take months. Honestly, yeah. But once you get that new property, then it sort of gives you that rebirth again of people are a bit more excited about a new property. So we're hoping in just a couple of months we can tie it all over. Obviously, we'll close on it and do everything we have to do for that, but maybe 2 or 3 months. Yeah, it's a fair bit of money, and there's a lot of investors involved. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. So in our world of development, a lot of similar conversations, and obviously fundraising is an important step. It sounds like you're buying existing properties that you're improving. In our case, we develop new properties, and every time we talk to new property owners that we partner with, or new landowners that we partner with to develop it, the conversation inevitably comes down to, well, how long is it going to take? What is it going to take to actually get the project financed?
Yep.
So it's always an interesting conversation. As far as debt financing, are you involved on the debt side or primarily on the equity?
Primarily equity, yeah. I haven't, because I'll be building out the fund for this, so just doing everything. I haven't started yet, but just creating the fund, and then both parties will be putting their investors into the same fund, and the fund will be investing into the property. So yeah, I haven't had to deal with the debt side of things, which it's something that'll come along the pipeline, I'm sure, at some stage.
Right. Yeah, and working with trustworthy, experienced partners has definitely been a theme on this podcast. That's what a lot of my guests are talking about. Clearly, it is important to rely on the team of people that can help you achieve the goal. If somebody really wanted to try to do it on their own, would you advise that? Is it possible? How long would it take?
If they are Superwoman or Superman, they'll be able to do it. But if you're not that, it's a lot easier, right? And it gives you that little bit more of comfort, and especially me, I can just stay in my lane. And you asked me about the underwriting and stuff like that, but I don't need to know the underwriting, right? Like I can just focus on that one thing and just stay in my lane and focus on that and do that well. I suppose once you've built that out, and then you can start hiring people if you want to. But at the end of the day, teamwork makes the dream work, right? Like lean on people that have that experience. And the people, what I first did when I first started is a trick that I sort of used, not a trick, but it's a method that I used when I was project managing, is I would go around and ask every contractor about, oh yeah, this project, and then what they thought about it. And they'd all give me their responses of what to look out for. Oh, don't do it because this is going to be an issue and that's going to be an issue. And then I knew the issues because everyone had their point of view, and I just took that back with me, right? So that's how I found a good operator. I went around and I gave a deal. I said, oh, I've got this deal. We should do it together. So I went around to a bunch of different operators and said that, and watched them and their response that they gave back to me. And then from there, I judged who underwrites, too in depth, or who's transparent, or who's open to conversations. And you sort of see a lot just in those small conversations. So that's how I landed on the people that I'm partnering with, is just they have that open, transparent, and they've got that experience, and they're happy to walk away from a deal like we did just last month, right? So yeah, the team is everything, and until you get the experience, it's hard to move very quickly in especially multifamily real estate without a track record behind you. So yeah, very
Right.
difficult.
Right. So right now, economy is challenging. Obviously, interest rates are high. As we're recording this summer of 2024, what do you tell your investors about the timing to invest into real estate? Is now really a good time?
I don't get too involved with the interest rate, but I suppose I get involved with. Have you seen that graph of investor sentiment and the feeling of investor sentiment? Have you seen that graph? How it's like
No, not
it's got
recently.
that. It's sort of, yeah. It looks like the infinity sort of sign, and when you're at the top of that graph, it's euphoria. It's everyone's happy, but that's the worst time to be investing. And when you think back to 2020 and that euphoria, and I remember in 2020, I had a friend's girlfriend that's never invested in her life start investing in shares because she said it's the best time ever to do it. And I sort of took a step back and thought, why is a person that's never cared about investing all of a sudden wanting to do it? And it's because of that euphoria stage, that the sentiment that everybody is having at the time. And that's what I think of is that graph and that the feeling of the 2020. And then I like to get the graph up. And sorry that I brought it up randomly and we can't get it up. But at the bottom of that graph, it shows that, people are sort of a little bit more standoffish, but it's actually the best time to be in real estate and to be investing. So I normally just get the graph up and ask them, where do you think that we are right now in this graph? And then they pinpoint, oh, we're here, in the graph, which is at the bottom of the graph, which shows that it's the best time to be investing. So they just sort of said it to themselves that it's a good time to be investing. So that's what I'm using at the moment when I'm speaking to people that are worried about interest rates and everything else. I'm just, more leaning towards that, because at the end of the day, we can't help where interest rates go. But yeah, I suppose at this stage, we sort of know that it's not going to go too far up or too far down, right? But it's going to have some sort of shift when you do look at it. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it's like old Buffett quote, right? When others are fearful, be bullish, or however it's however it
Yeah.
goes.
I try not to say that because everybody says it, right? So I steer
Right.
away from the cliche.
Right. Right. Interesting. Okay. And so, where do you see a future? Where does it take you?
Yeah, I suppose essentially continue what I'm doing, right? Like the long term plan and goal will be to have a visa in the US, which I don't think should be too far away. Australia and the US have a good connection, so there's an entrepreneur visa that I can get after I've jumped into a deal and whatnot and made a bit of progress. So yeah, essentially I see King Source Capital as being my baby for the next 15 or 20 years in the US, and just taking down properties of my own in the not too distant future, really. But for now, I'm just focusing on partnering with good investors and learning that process. And because at the end of the day, I've got project management experience. So I'm 8 years of project management experience, and I've ran 150 million worth of capex projects and run teams of 5 to 50 people. I've taken projects from concept all the way to completion, and none of my projects have ever run a dollar over budget. So I'm just looking to transition my project management experience into asset management experience. So that's where the long-term goal will be for me.
Got it. Got it. So, question I like to ask a lot of my guests is, what is your favorite professional tool? What do you use the most?
LinkedIn at this stage. LinkedIn is at this stage, because I'm obviously investor relations and reaching out to a lot of people that potentially could invest along King Source Capital. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm posting there at LinkedIn and conversing with a lot of people on a regular basis. So LinkedIn for now, for sure.
Okay. And so investors come from your LinkedIn connections. Is it from your own cold outreach, or is it from people reacting to the content that you're posting?
Generally me reaching out because I'm in a lot of groups at the moment. So just seeing people in groups and then having those discussions, or people from events and seeing that they're going to the same events, I'll reach out and speak with them. So yeah, I'm pretty open to speaking to new people and especially, you never know who you're going to speak to, especially online. And a lot of people have a abundance of experience as well. So the amount of times that I've reached out to someone and jumped on a call and they've, pointed me in the right direction or something, or given me advice about something because they've been doing it for 20 or 30 years. So yeah, just and I think LinkedIn is the best place for that, right? There's just a wealth of knowledge there and a wealth of experience all in this little hub on LinkedIn that's available to everybody. So yeah, I really like LinkedIn.
Got it. Can you share criteria of how you find how do you search the people that you think would become your investors into projects that you're doing?
Honestly, they're in real estate groups, and I sort of speak with people that are along the same lines of me, right? Like they're either an engineer, they've project managed, they've been in the construction industry, or they're a trade, because I've got a background in that sort of thing as well. When I was a kid and when I was at uni, I was doing trades as well. So that, or anybody that's on a mine site, oil and gas, those sort of people. I guess we have a lot in common. I've done those things and been a part of it for a few years. So yeah, and at the end of the day, everyone sort of reminds me of my friend, and all my friends, I try and make them invest as much as I can, and they're still so standoffish of investing. And I just want to make sure that more people have the opportunity, and because a lot of people don't know, right, the opportunity that is there, and they're not sure that a lot of people don't know that they can invest their IRAs and put it into a self-directed account and put that into real estate or put that into something that can make their money work for them. So even just getting out in front of people, and they don't have to invest with me or be in any of my deals, but if it's I actually had a discussion with someone yesterday, and he was sort of sitting on the fence, never heard about it, and then I pushed him into the direction. I said, you've got to start doing this. Like don't mean to tell you what to do, but he was the nicest guy. And he's like, I just have this like this threshold of that I don't want to invest because of the risk. And I was like, I can tell by talking to you that you've got that high risk threshold, that you really want the outcome, like that successful outcome, but in your mind right now, it's not worth the risk. So I said, my advice is that if you can accept the risk and know what you're going to implement to make sure that you can overcome those risks and you're comfortable with that, that's where you'll see your best results. And yeah, I ended up getting his number and stuff. We text through WhatsApp now, so hopefully he doesn't have to invest through me. But as long as he starts passively investing and putting himself into a different position, I'll be happy. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Your connections, obviously from Australia, would you say it's harder or easier for you to target them versus your regular domestic U.S. domestic investors?
I actually, as soon as I moved over, I just focus on US investors and US people, because we're on the same time zone. I notice that when I speak with people, it's the same problem I had when I was in Australia. I was speaking with people and it'd be like an 8 hour lag by the time I responded or something like that, or just different time zones. And that's one of the main reasons that I wanted to move over, to separate myself from that time zone and obviously be in the 51st state of the US and Mexico. So I'm only a 2 hour flight from Texas, so nice and close. So yeah, just mainly focus on US and some Canadian investors at this stage.
Interesting. Yeah, obviously, fundraising is one of the most important parts of real estate acquisitions and real estate development. We spent a lot of time talking about reaching out to investors and getting projects funded. Right now, economy is fairly complicated. A lot of institutional investors are sitting on the sidelines, and a lot of banks or lenders, private lenders, are also sitting on sidelines. So it's definitely taken a lot more work to get projects funded. And whenever we looked at new development projects, it's all the same conversation. Yes, it's easy to hire architects and engineers, and there's a lot of contractors that are willing to do the work. Financing is at its own project, typically, that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up to our half an hour timeline benchmark that I like to target for these conversations. Anything else you'd like to add, Blake, at the end?
I've pretty much covered everything, but I suppose if anyone wants to reach out, they can find me through Kingshurst Capital, and yeah, flick me an email through there, and I'll be happy to have a discussion with them. But that's everything from me, and I appreciate the time, Eugene. It's been great having a chat with you, and can't wait to see some projects that you're putting forward at the moment.
Excellent. Thank you, Blake. Yeah, we'll have your contact information, your LinkedIn, your social contacts in the podcast notes. Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to you.
Awesome. Thank you.